The desert stretches to the horizon, a vast expanse of ochre and rust-colored sands broken only by the silhouettes of weathered rock formations. The heat shimmers in waves above the ground, distorting the air and bending the light into mirages. In this arid landscape, survival is measured not in days, but in heartbeats. Every organism here must be efficient, resilient, and resourceful. And at the heart of this system lurks one of Australia's most formidable survivors, the goanna. The goanna is no mere lizard. Belonging to the monitor family, it is part of a lineage that stretches back over 90 million years, a cousin of the mighty Komodo dragon and a distant relative of ancient reptiles that once ruled the earth. In Australia, more than 25 species of goannas inhabit landscapes from dense forests to coastal mangroves, but in the outback deserts, they become something more than predators. They are engineers of the earth, shapers of microhabitats, and in the lore of indigenous Australians, guardians of places that must not be disturbed. In the context of our theory, they take on yet another role, the desert keys to hidden gateways, custodians of entrances buried beneath the sands. The first impression of a desert goanna is its sheer physical presence. Some species stretch more than 2 meters from snout to tail. Their bodies are armored in tough, overlapping scales that reflect the harsh sun, while their long claws rake into sand and stone alike. These claws are not just tools for digging prey from burrows, they are instruments of excavation, capable of tearing into the crust of the earth to create elaborate tunnels. In the desert, where shade is scarce and temperatures often exceed 45 degrees Celsius, these burrows are sanctuaries, not only for the goanna itself, but for countless smaller creatures that take refuge in abandoned tunnels. From an ecological perspective, this makes the goanna a keystone species. By reshaping the earth, they create shelter that allows biodiversity to persist in otherwise inhospitable conditions. Insects, reptiles, even small mammals survive the desert heat in the cool hollows left behind by these reptiles. To see a goanna is to glimpse not only a predator, but also a living architect, carving out microclimates beneath the sand. And in the context of the Stargate Network, this behavior takes on a more symbolic weight. The burrow as a keyhole, the act of digging as the mechanism of unlocking, the earth itself as a door that only certain creatures know how to open. But the goanna's survival is not limited to physical strength. Its physiology is a marvel of evolutionary refinement. Unlike many lizards, goannas have a relatively high aerobic capacity, allowing them to sustain bursts of activity that other reptiles cannot. Their forked tongues flick constantly, sampling molecules in the air, feeding chemical signals to a Jacobson's organ in the roof of the mouth. This sensory adaptation gives them a hunter's edge. They can track the faintest scent of carrion or prey over long distances, an ability that mirrors their role as seekers of hidden thresholds in the desert. To indigenous Australians, this acute perception was not just a biological fact, but a spiritual truth. Goannas were seen as beings that knew the land beneath the surface, creatures that could find the unseen. Predator-prey interactions reveal even more of their desert mastery. A goanna might pursue a fleeing skink, its long body weaving with surprising speed across the sand. It may climb into trees to raid bird nests or ambush small mammals emerging at dusk. In rare but recorded events, larger goannas have been observed attempting to overpower wallabies, using sheer strength and sharp claws to bring down prey many times their size. Yet their appetite is not restricted to the hunt. As scavengers, they play a vital role in consuming carrion, reducing the spread of disease and recycling nutrients into the ecosystem. By straddling the line between predator and scavenger, they embody both destruction and renewal, much like Athreshold Guardian in myth, deciding who passes and who does not. The heat of the desert dictates their rhythms. As ectotherms, goannas rely on external warmth to fuel their bodies. Morning often finds them sprawled on rocks, bodies pressed flat to maximize surface contact, absorbing the sun's energy like living solar panels. Once their muscles are warm, their pace quickens, and the hunt begins. By afternoon, when the heat becomes lethal, they retreat underground, escaping the furnace above. This cycle of emergence and withdrawal mirrors the imagined pulse of an interdimensional system, times when the key is visible and active, and times when it vanishes beneath the surface. Dreamtime stories reinforce this dual identity. In many Aboriginal traditions, giant lizards and serpents are said to have carved valleys and shaped mountains. They are both creators and destroyers, guardians of sacred waterholes and rocky outcrops where the land's energy is strongest. Warnings embedded in these stories caution against disturbing such places, for doing so risks more than physical danger. It risks becoming lost in worlds beyond. These oral traditions may have functioned as maps of survival, guiding people safely through hostile terrain. But they also align eerily with the idea of an ancient Stargate system, where goannas are not simply lizards, but the living locks on doors never meant to be opened lightly. The desert itself supports this interpretation. Beneath its barren surface lies a labyrinth of sandstone caves, underground aquifers, and hidden chambers carved by water over millennia. Many of these places are dangerous to approach, with collapsible ceilings, sudden sinkholes, or toxic air. Yet to ancient eyes, such hazards might have been more than geology. They were thresholds, entrances to other realms. And the animals that lived nearby, especially those with the power to dig, burrow, or vanish into the ground, became natural symbols of guardianship. The goanna, with its burrowing claws and subterranean instincts, embodies that symbolism perfectly. Rare behaviors deepen this impression. During the breeding season, males engage in ritual combat, grappling upright on their hind legs in a wrestling match that can last for hours. These contests are displays of dominance, but in the context of myth, they evoke the idea of gatekeepers battling over control of a passage. The victor claims territory, the right to mate, and perhaps symbolically, the right to guard the key. For the viewer, the sight of two towering lizards locked in combat against the backdrop of the desert feels less like biology and more like a ritual, a performance of strength tied to ancient codes of access. Even the goanna's adaptability hints at deeper mysteries. They are opportunists, able to exploit multiple habitats and food sources. In some indigenous traditions, this adaptability was seen as a warning. Follow the goanna too closely, and you may be led to places where the world itself shifts. The notion resonates with the Stargate theory. What if the goanna's wandering paths are not random, but align with unseen energy lines running beneath the desert? What if the burrow entrances, scattered across the outback, are markers of something older than human memory, entrances to a network hidden in stone? From a scientific standpoint, these questions remain speculative, yet the natural evidence is compelling. Goannas shape the desert, sense what others cannot, and guard places most humans dare not tread. Whether one interprets them as evolutionary marvels or mythic gatekeepers, they hold a position of power in the landscape. The desert without them would be quieter, emptier, less alive. With them, it feels charged, as if the earth itself holds secrets, and the goanna is the sentinel waiting for those who would seek them. As the sun dips low and shadows stretch across the red earth, a goanna emerges from its burrow one last time. It pauses, tongue flicking, tasting the air. Behind it, the dark opening of the tunnel gapes like a door into another world. The lizard lingers at the threshold, half in light, half in shadow, a guardian of two realms. And for those who know the stories, the message is clear. The desert keeps its keys hidden, and the goanna decides who is permitted to find them. The tide recedes from a jagged stretch of coastline, leaving shallow pools scattered across the exposed reef. In these glassy basins, sunlight fractures into rippling mosaics, dancing over shells, corals, and drifting strands of seaweed. For a casual observer, the pools seem tranquil, miniature aquariums left behind by the sea. Yet beneath the still surface, a hunter waits. It is small, barely larger than a golf ball, but it holds within its body a weapon more potent than almost any creature on Earth. This is the blue-ringed octopus, a master of concealment, an assassin cloaked in beauty, and in the framework of the Stargate Network, a living lock placed on the thresholds of the sea. At first glance, it appears unremarkable. Its mottled skin blends seamlessly with sand, rock, and coral rubble. Camouflage is its first and perhaps most vital survival tool, driven by specialized cells known as chromatophores. These pigment-filled sacs expand or contract under neural control, shifting the octopus's color and texture in fractions of a second. With this ability, the octopus becomes a phantom in its environment, a trickster that can vanish even while in plain sight. Only when threatened does its true nature reveal itself. Brilliant rings of cobalt blue flare across its body, glowing with an intensity that seems unnatural against the muted tones of the reef. This display is not decoration, it is a warning. A visual siren that proclaims, "Approach, and you may not return." The science behind this warning is no less extraordinary than the display itself. Within its salivary glands lies tetrodotoxin, a neurotoxin capable of shutting down nerve transmission in humans within minutes. A dose smaller than a grain of rice can kill an adult. Unlike many venoms, tetrodotoxin is not produced by the animal itself, but by symbiotic bacteria living within its tissues. This partnership, though deadly to others, benefits the octopus in multiple ways. It discourages predators, gives it dominance over small prey, and even provides a microbial defense system against infection. In evolutionary terms, this collaboration between host and bacteria is as close as life gets to a biological security system. For the purposes of the Stargate Network, it is easy to imagine this venom as a lock, a biochemical barrier ensuring that not all who stumble upon the coastal pools are allowed passage. But danger is only half the story. To understand the octopus fully, one must also appreciate its intelligence. Octopuses are among the most cognitively advanced of all invertebrates. They solve puzzles, manipulate objects, and exhibit behaviors that suggest a kind of problem-solving ability once thought limited to mammals and birds. In the tidal pools, this intelligence is honed into precision survival tactics. A blue-ringed octopus will patiently stalk small crabs or shrimp, extending one of its 8 arms in a slow, deliberate sweep. With each movement, specialized suckers taste the water, detecting chemical cues. When the strike comes, it is swift and inescapable. The octopus envelops its prey, delivers a paralyzing bite, and consumes it whole. Efficiency and lethality wrapped in elegance, qualities befitting a guardian of hidden gateways. From an ecological perspective, the blue-ringed octopus is part of a delicate balance. It regulates populations of small crustaceans and fish, preventing unchecked growth that could destabilize the micro-ecosystems of tidal pools and reefs. At the same time, it is prey for larger fish, eels, and occasionally wading birds, predators that must gamble with the risk of its venom. This constant tension underscores the octopus's role not just as a killer, but as a node in the intricate web of marine life. In the metaphor of the Stargate, it becomes the lock not only because of its venom, but because its very existence regulates who thrives and who fails at the edge of the ocean. Indigenous lore along coastal regions of Australia often speaks of glowing or shifting sea creatures as messengers or warnings. Some stories describe luminous beings that guard sacred waters, their lights a signal to keep away. When one observes the sudden flare of the blue rings, intense, pulsating like electric fire beneath the skin, it is easy to see how these myths emerged. The octopus does not merely hide or fight, it announces. Its rings are the marine equivalent of a warning beacon, the lights of a gate that has locked itself against intrusion. To step closer is to ignore the code of the sea, and for those who did not heed the signal, survival was far from guaranteed. The habitat of the blue-ringed octopus deepens its symbolic weight. Found most commonly in shallow reefs, tidal pools, and sandy shallows, it inhabits the very margins where land and sea blur. These liminal zones are thresholds by definition, places of transition where one world ends and another begins. To the scientific eye, they are biologically rich ecosystems, teeming with species adapted to the ebb and flow of tides. To the mythic imagination, they are portals. And who better to guard such thresholds than a creature that embodies both invisibility and sudden lethal revelation? Behaviorally, the octopus offers further mysteries. Unlike many cephalopods, blue-ringed octopuses are relatively small and fragile, with lifespans of little more than 2 years. Yet in that short time they reproduce with an intensity that ensures their lineage endures. After mating, the female carries hundreds of eggs, carefully brooding them beneath her arms for months, never feeding during this vigil. When the eggs hatch, she dies, her life expended in the act of guardianship. In the Stargate analogy, this sacrifice resembles the final test of a lock. The gatekeeper gives her life to ensure the next generation continues to patrol the threshold. Surprising behaviors emerge even in captivity. Blue-ringed octopuses have been documented manipulating shells and stones to construct makeshift shelters. This tool-like behavior suggests foresight, an ability to alter the environment for survival. In the wild, such intelligence would be invaluable, allowing them to survive in the ever-changing landscapes of reef and tide pool. For viewers, these glimpses of ingenuity add depth to their role. They are not simply venomous automatons. They are thinkers, problem solvers, a consciousness at work in miniature, a reminder that intelligence is not the sole domain of vertebrates. Cinematically, the encounter is unforgettable. Imagine a camera moving slowly through a tidal pool at dusk. A crab scuttles across the sand, unaware of the hunter nearby. The octopus, camouflaged perfectly, flickers to life as its rings ignite in radiant blue. For a moment, the pool seems alive with energy, the circles glowing like portal lights beneath the surface. The crab freezes. The octopus strikes. In that instant, predator and prey dissolve into something larger, a performance of survival that doubles as a ritual of guardianship. The lock has engaged, the threshold defended, and yet for all its beauty and terror, the blue-ringed octopus remains fragile. Pollution, habitat destruction, and climate change threaten the tidal ecosystems it inhabits. Rising ocean temperatures disrupt coral reefs, while human presence increases the risk of accidental encounters. Ironically, the very creature that seems to embody an indestructible lock is itself vulnerable to forces beyond its control. This paradox of immense power housed in fragile flesh mirrors the delicate balance of the Stargate network as a whole. Keys must endure, yet they can be broken. Guardians may defend, yet they too can fall. In the end, the blue-ringed octopus is more than a venomous curiosity. It is a creature that straddles worlds, land and sea, beauty and danger, invisibility and revelation. It plays a vital ecological role, serves as a living warning system, and carries within its tiny body the power to end a life in moments. In the mythology of thresholds, it becomes the signal light of the sea, the living lock placed on portals hidden beneath waves. To watch its rings ignite in the twilight of a reef pool is to glimpse not only evolution's artistry, but also the imagined code of an ancient system, one that reminds us that not all doors are meant to be opened, and not all waters are safe to cross. The Australian outback unfolds like an endless sea of ochre plains and silver-green eucalyptus, its horizons stretching so far they seem to curve with the earth itself. Heat radiates upward in mirages, blurring the distinction between ground and sky. For those who travel across this land, orientation can become a matter of life and death. There are few landmarks, fewer reliable sources of water, and no easy sense of direction. Yet one animal has mastered this terrain in a way no human ever has: the kangaroo. With its long legs, spring-loaded tendons, and a body built for distance, it moves across the continent along lines of precision, as if guided by an invisible map. In the context of the Stargate Network, this is no coincidence. The kangaroo is the pathfinder, a living navigator that charts safe passage along hidden currents of energy running through the land. To watch a mob of kangaroos in motion is to see something almost unnatural in its rhythm. Each bound carries them forward in graceful arcs, their tails counterbalancing the force of their leaps. At full stride, they can cover over 9 meters in a single hop and sustain speeds of 60 kilometers per hour, rivaling many of the fastest terrestrial animals on Earth. Yet what makes this movement most remarkable is not the speed or power, but the efficiency. Their long tendons act like elastic bands, storing and releasing energy with each bound, allowing them to travel great distances while expending surprisingly little oxygen. In the desert, where resources are scarce and the cost of wasted energy can be fatal, this adaptation is nothing short of miraculous. Scientists studying their movement patterns have observed that kangaroos often travel in remarkably straight lines, even across uneven or obstructed terrain. When they do shift direction, the change is abrupt and decisive, as though following a pathway invisible to the human eye. Indigenous Australians long recognized this behavior and wove it into the oral cartography of the land. Songlines, the intricate networks of story, song and dance that encode geography, resources and spiritual meaning, often feature the kangaroo as a guide. Following the animal's path was not simply a way to find food. It was a method of navigation, a way to ensure safe passage across the vastness of the continent. In this light, the kangaroo is more than an animal. It is a living compass, moving along the ley-like threads that connect one sacred site to another. From an ecological standpoint, kangaroos are not only pathfinders for people, but also for the ecosystems they inhabit. Their grazing patterns shape plant communities, trimming grasses in a way that reduces fuel loads for wildfires. Their constant movement helps distribute seeds across long distances, contributing to the regeneration of vegetation. Even their droppings enrich the soil, providing nutrients that sustain insects and small plants. In many ways, they are engineers of the landscape, their daily routines writing invisible signatures across the outback. These signatures may look like simple tracks in the dust, but when scaled up across centuries of repetition, they form corridors of life, and perhaps, metaphorically, corridors of energy. The kangaroo's physiology also reinforces its role as a creature designed for movement. Unlike most mammals, kangaroos cannot walk backward. Their anatomy simply does not allow it. They are creatures of perpetual forward motion, symbolic of progression and directionality. In the Dreamtime, this has profound meaning. The kangaroo often represents journeys both physical and spiritual, guiding travelers from one place to another. To walk against its path is to risk becoming lost, not only in geography but in destiny itself. Within the Stargate theory, this forward-only movement aligns with the idea of energy lines that must be followed in sequence, with no possibility of turning back. To stray from the kangaroo's guidance is to step off the map entirely, and perhaps vanish into the unknown. Predator-prey interactions reveal yet another dimension to their navigational role. Dingoes, Australia's apex land predators, often hunt kangaroos by attempting to cut off their forward path. The kangaroo's response is not simply to flee, but to alter its trajectory with sudden, almost geometric precision. Observations show that mobs will break apart and reform along new vectors, confusing predators while maintaining a collective sense of direction. These survival strategies may have been read by indigenous observers as signs of coded knowledge, the ability to sense danger and redirect safely along alternate pathways. In a landscape where one wrong turn could lead to dehydration or starvation, following the kangaroo was not superstition. It was pragmatic survival strategy encoded in myth. Cinematically, the kangaroo is a perfect subject. At dawn, mobs emerge from the shadows, their silhouettes framed against the rising sun. The camera follows as they gather on open plains, ears twitching, eyes scanning the horizon. Then, with a sudden signal, they move. Synchronized leaps carrying them across the desert floor in slow motion, the dust rising in golden clouds behind them. Overlaid upon this footage, one can imagine glowing ley lines appearing beneath their feet, stretching across the landscape like a luminous grid. The kangaroos do not hesitate. They know exactly where to go. Biologically, the kangaroo's survival strategies go even deeper. Their reproductive system is one of the most flexible in the animal kingdom. Females can delay the development of an embryo in a phenomenon called embryonic diapause, allowing them to synchronize birth with favorable environmental conditions. A single female may simultaneously support 3 young at different developmental stages: an embryo indiapause, a pouch-bound joey, and a still-dependent youngster feeding outside the pouch. This extraordinary adaptation ensures that kangaroo populations persist even through cycles of drought and abundance. Symbolically, this ability to hold back time until the moment is right adds another layer to their role as navigators. They are not only pathfinders across space, but also across the rhythms of time, aligning reproduction with the hidden cycles of the land. Rarely discussed but equally fascinating is their social structure. Kangaroos gather in mobs, but these groups are fluid, merging and breaking apart depending on food availability and predation risk. Within mobs, dominance is established through ritualized boxing matches, where males rear up on their hind legs and exchange blows, using their tails as a third point of balance. Though dramatic, these contests rarely cause serious injury. Instead, they serve as signals, reaffirming hierarchy and order within the group. In the metaphor of the Stargate Network, these contests resemble coded exchanges, signals determining who has the authority to lead along the energy lines, who may guide, and who must follow. The kangaroo's interactions with its environment extend even to water, the most precious resource in the outback. Their kidneys are extraordinarily efficient, concentrating urine to conserve fluid, while their behavior adapts to the rhythms of drought. They dig shallow wells in dry creek beds with their forelimbs, unearthing water that lies just beneath the surface. These wells are not only used by kangaroos, but by countless other animals, creating nodes of life in otherwise barren landscapes. In the language of ecology, this makes them facilitators, enabling survival for others. In the language of myth, it makes them guides, not only for humans, but for the entire web of life that follows their paths. Indigenous songlines capture this role with precision. Each songline is both a map and a story, guiding travelers across vast distances using sequences of landmarks, sacred sites, and animal behaviors as cues. The kangaroo often features in these narratives, not as a symbol alone, but as a literal guide. By tracing the movements of kangaroos and encoding them into oral traditions, Indigenous Australians created a navigation system more reliable than any compass. For thousands of years, this knowledge ensured survival across one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. In the context of the Stargate theory, songlines become not just survival tools, but encoded maps to an interdimensional network. The kangaroo, bounding along these paths, becomes the living signal that marks the way. To ignore these paths, or to cross them without permission, was considered dangerous. Stories tell of travelers who wandered from the songlines and were never seen again. To modern ears, these tales may sound like warnings of dehydration or misadventure. But through the lens of the Stargate framework, they suggest something more. The possibility that stepping away from the kangaroo's guidance means leaving the safety of this world's pathways altogether. To stray too far is to risk erasure, to vanish into corridors where only the pathfinder can move unharmed. As dusk falls over the outback, the kangaroos settle into the shadows once more. The camera lingers on the tracks left in the sand, long, straight imprints punctuated by sudden, decisive turns. To most, they are just footprints. But to those who understand the code of the land, they are the lines of a map, guiding the way across deserts, both physical and unseen. In the mythology of the Stargate Network, they are more than animals. They are navigators of hidden currents, custodians of direction, guardians of a cartography older than history itself. And so the kangaroo, bounding into the night, remains the pathfinder, the one who knows the way forward when others are lost. The northern woodlands of Australia are alive with heat. The sun presses down through a lattice of eucalyptus leaves, painting the forest floor in shifting patches of light. Cicadas hum in a deafening chorus, while dragonflies dart across shallow creeks. In this landscape, where predators stalk in silence and prey must constantly remain alert, one animal commands attention with a sudden explosion of color and form. The frilled-neck lizard, Chlamydosaurus kingi, is an evolutionary paradox, most of the time invisible, blending seamlessly with bark and branches, yet capable in a single moment of transforming itself into one of the most dramatic displays in the animal kingdom. It is this duality, silence and signal, invisibility and spectacle, that defines its role both in ecology and in the imagined Stargate Network. At rest, the frilled-neck lizard is unassuming. Its mottled brown and grey scales mirror the trunks of eucalyptus trees, and its body, flattened against bark, resembles nothing more than a knot or shadow. It can remain motionless for long stretches, relying on stillness as camouflage. But when threatened, or when asserting dominance, it unveils its defining feature, a circular frill of skin and cartilage supported by elongated spines of cartilage that radiate from the jaw. This frill, usually folded back against the neck, snaps forward and outward in a display that can more than double the lizard's apparent size. At the same time, the mouth opens wide, revealing a flush of pink or yellow, while the animal hisses and rears onto its hind legs. For a predator, this transformation is startling, an instant escalation from obscurity to confrontation. From a biological perspective, the frill is a multifunctional adaptation. Its primary role is defensive, an attempt to intimidate predators ranging from snakes and raptors to monitor lizards. The sudden expansion, paired with threatening postures, often causes would-be attackers to hesitate long enough for the lizard to flee. But intimidation is only part of the story. In some situations, the frill is deployed during courtship, signaling health and vitality to potential mates. The vibrancy of the frill's coloration, which varies between individuals, may reflect nutritional status or genetic fitness, making it a form of honest advertisement. In other words, the frill is both alarm and invitation, danger and desire. The mechanics behind this transformation reveal remarkable precision. A network of cartilage rods, muscles and skin folds work in unison, snapping the frill forward in less than a second. Unlike horns or armor, which require constant energy to grow and maintain, the frill is lightweight and collapsible, a cost-effective investment in survival. Its efficiency highlights a broader theme in evolution. Dramatic displays often emerge not from brute force, but from ingenuity, exploiting simple structures for maximum impact. In the context of the Stargate Network, such efficiency makes sense. A signal does not need to be permanent. It only needs to be unmistakable when activated. The environment in which this lizard thrives amplifies the power of the signal. Northern Australia's woodlands are landscapes of transition, places where savanna meets monsoon forest, where dry seasons bake the earth and wet seasons flood it with life. In these shifting ecosystems, visibility is everything. Animals must detect threats quickly, communicate efficiently, and adapt to changing conditions. The frilled-neck lizard embodies this necessity, standing as a living flare in a world where hesitation means death. Indigenous stories capture this symbolism, portraying lizards as announcers of danger or change. The sudden eruption of the frill becomes not only a warning to predators, but a message to the landscape itself. Something has shifted. The gate is open. For ecologists, the lizard's behaviors extend beyond display. Its locomotion is unusual among reptiles. When fleeing, it often rises fully onto its hind legs, sprinting upright across the ground in a near-comical run. This bipedal escape is not only effective, freeing the forelimbs for balance, but strikingly anthropomorphic. Early observers compared it to a miniature dinosaur dashing through the grass, a living reminder of evolutionary continuity. In practical terms, this running style enables rapid bursts of speed across open clearings, reducing the lizard's exposure to aerial predators. In the Stargate analogy, it is as though the signal does not only flare, but then runs ahead, pointing the way. Predator-prey dynamics add depth to the picture. Raptors such as brown falcons and kookaburras will swoop on frilled-neck lizards, basking at the edges of clearings. When cornered, the frill is deployed, creating a split second of confusion. If the predator hesitates, even briefly, the lizard bolts for the nearest tree, scuttling upward to vanish against the bark. Monitors and snakes, however, are less deterred. Here, the frill serves a different function, buying time. The delay allows the lizard to choose its escape route, to calculate the direction of safety. In this way, the frill is not a shield, but a signal, a flare marking the moment when decisions must be made. From a physiological perspective, the frill may also play a secondary role in thermoregulation. By exposing a broad surface area of skin lined with blood vessels, the lizard can potentially shed heat more rapidly in the stifling conditions of the wet season. While not its primary function, this added benefit illustrates how evolution often layers multiple utilities onto a single adaptation. What begins as one solution, a warning device, can double as another, a radiator. For the Stargate metaphor, this duality reinforces the idea that signals are never just one thing. They can be warnings, invitations, or responses to forces that shift unseen. The frilled-neck lizard's reproductive behavior also contributes to its role as signaler. Males often engage in territorial disputes, confronting each other with frills extended, bodies elevated, and mouths gaping. These displays minimize the need for physical combat, allowing contests to be settled visually rather than violently. In evolutionary terms, this reduces injury and preserves energy. In mythic terms, it is a ritual of signaling, a duel of flags rather than weapons. Whoever possesses the more imposing display wins the right to territory and mates, while the loser retreats. In the imagined Stargate Network, such contests resemble coded exchanges, signals sent and received, establishing authority over which lizard has the right to announce an opening. Cinematically, the lizard's transformation is one of nature's most striking spectacles. Imagine the camera moving slowly across a quiet forest clearing. Leaves rustle in a faint breeze, cicadas pulse in rhythm. Then, in an instant, the stillness is shattered. The lizard rises, its frill unfurling like a fiery halo, colors flashing in the sun. The camera tightens, capturing the detail of scales, the veins of the frill glowing as if lit from within. Overlaid with CGI, waves of energy ripple outward, as though the frill has triggered invisible currents in the air. The animal stands not just as a reptile, but as a signal tower, a biological alarm announcing that something beneath the surface has stirred. Yet for all its dramatic flair, the frilled-neck lizard remains vulnerable. Habitat loss from agriculture and urban expansion reduces the trees it depends on for refuge. Climate change alters the balance of wet and dry seasons, shifting the availability of food and breeding conditions. Introduced predators like feral cats and foxes add new pressures. In this way, the signaler itself is at risk of being silenced. And this carries symbolic weight. For if the lizard is the flare that marks the opening of thresholds, what happens when the signal is gone? Without the alarm, travelers might pass unmarked into danger, or portals may open unnoticed, unguarded, unregulated. The frilled-neck lizard, then, is not simply a curiosity for tourists or a spectacle for cameras. It is a finely tuned survivalist, its display a masterpiece of evolution's ingenuity. It functions as a warning, a communication tool, a thermoregulator, and a social signal. In indigenous storytelling, it becomes a messenger of change, a herald of thresholds. In the framework of the Stargate Network, it is the signal itself, the flare that reveals when and where the hidden gates of the land are active. To see a frill unfurl in the heat of the day is to witness more than defense. It is to glimpse a living code, a biological flag planted on the shifting borders between worlds. The river lies heavy and still beneath the midday sun, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple of an insecta, the gliding wake of a waterbird. To the untrained eye, it is tranquil, but to those who know the land, still water is never empty. Beneath the surface, predators wait in silence, and along the banks, the next generation of those predators is preparing to emerge. Hidden in a nest of vegetation and sand lies a clutch of crocodile eggs, fragile, elongated capsules containing some of the most ancient life forms still walking the planet. What begins as silence soon becomes a chorus. From inside each egg, faint squeaks begin to sound, high-pitched and insistent. One hatchling calls, then another, until the air fills with a chorus of voices. These are crocodile hatchlings, and though each is scarcely larger than the palm of a hand, together their cries form a signal, an alarm that the threshold has been breached, that guardianship must soon awaken. The biology of this moment is extraordinary. Unlike many reptiles, crocodiles exhibit a form of parental care rare in their class. The hatchlings' calls are not random. They are directed to the mother, who remains close to the nest, listening. At the sound of her offspring's voices, she responds. With immense care, she uncovers the nest, delicately lifting the eggs or newly emerged young in her jaws. What seems brutal to human eyes, a mouthful of sharp teeth surrounding fragile bodies, is in fact one of nature's most precise acts of protection. One by one she carries them to the water, releasing them into the shallows where they will spend the perilous first months of life. For the hatchlings, survival is a matter of numbers. A single female may lay 40 to 60 eggs, yet only a fraction will reach adulthood. Birds, fish, snakes, and even other crocodiles prey upon them. Their small bodies, striped with bright bands of yellow and black, serve as camouflage among reeds and shadows, but concealment is not enough. Their true defense lies in the chorus. When threatened, the hatchlings release an explosive burst of squeaks and croaks, a sound that resonates through the air and water alike. It is both a cry for help and a deterrent, startling predators and summoning the mother. For an intruder approaching the riverbank, the sudden eruption of dozens of tiny voices can be unnerving, an alarm system designed not for subtlety, but for impact. This chorus is more than noise. It is communication shaped by evolution. Each hatchling's call contains acoustic details that indicate urgency. Subtle variations in frequency and rhythm can signal whether they are hatching, distressed, or under attack. The mother interprets these cues, adjusting her behavior accordingly. In essence, the hatchlings function as a distributed network of sensors, their collective voices transmitting a warning signal across the ecosystem. Within the Stargate theory, this becomes something more. The alarms of the network, living sirens triggered when the hidden thresholds of the river are disturbed. The hatchlings do not guard the portals themselves. That role belongs to the massive adults, but they ensure no breach goes unnoticed. Indigenous stories about crocodiles often place them as threshold guardians. They inhabit liminal zones, rivers, swamps, and estuaries where land meets water. To cross such spaces without caution is to invite death. In Dreamtime narratives, crocodiles are sometimes portrayed as beings that punish arrogance, dragging those who overstep into the depths. Within this cultural framework, the hatchlings are not the guardians themselves, but heralds, the voices that precede the arrival of the larger force. They are the alarms before the punishment, the warnings before the threshold closes forever. Ecologically, the presence of hatchlings reverberates across the river system. They provide food for countless other species, fueling the survival of fish, birds, and reptiles alike. This predation may seem brutal, but it ensures energy flows efficiently through the ecosystem. At the same time, those that survive contribute to regulating fish populations and maintaining the balance of aquatic environments. Crocodiles are apex predators, but even at their earliest stages, they serve as keystones, linking food webs across multiple trophic levels. In this sense, the alarm function of the hatchlings is not only metaphorical. Their cries draw attention, redistribute predator behavior, and alter patterns of movement along the riverbank. They shape the dynamics of the system with their voices alone. The behavior of hatchlings in groups adds another layer to their function. Unlike solitary reptiles, they often remain clustered together, forming pods of siblings that move in unison. This aggregation increases their chances of survival, not just by overwhelming predators with numbers, but by amplifying their alarm calls. A single squeak may go unheard, but a dozen together form a piercing chorus. For the Stargate framework, this unity reflects the principle of a distributed alarm system. The strength of the signal lies not in the individual, but in the collective. The hatchlings, weak on their own, become powerful as a swarm, their voices carrying across the water like ripples of warning. Cinematically, the drama of their birth is unmatched. The camera descends into a shaded nest, focusing on the trembling shells. A crack splits the surface, a tiny snout pushes through, and a wet, blinking hatchling emerges into the world. Its squeak pierces the still air, soon joined by others, until the nest vibrates with sound. The mother appears, her massive form dwarfing the fragile young. With impossible delicacy, she lifts them in her jaws and carries them to the river. As the hatchlings enter the water, their voices rise into a chaotic chorus, echoing through the forest. Cut to the river surface, shimmering with subtle distortions, as though the water itself is a threshold, trembling in response to the alarm. Survival, however, is not guaranteed. Studies have shown that fewer than 1% of hatchlings survive to maturity. This mortality shapes crocodile populations, ensuring only the strongest and luckiest endure. Yet each hatchling, even in death, fulfills a role. Their cries summon the mother, their bodies feed the ecosystem, their presence signals the fertility of the river. In this way, they are alarms not just for portals, but for the health of the environment itself. A river rich with crocodile hatchlings is a river alive, its food webs intact. A river silent of their voices is one in decline. From a physiological perspective, hatchlings are born fully developed predators, miniature versions of their parents. They hunt insects, small fish, and amphibians almost immediately, displaying instincts honed over millions of years. Their senses are acute, with eyes adapted for low light and nostrils positioned high on the snout for breathing while submerged. Even their cries are optimized for propagation in both air and water, ensuring that no predator or mother can ignore them. These features highlight how survival at this fragile stage depends not only on concealment, but on communication. The hatchlings are voices first, hunters second. In the imagined Stargate network, this combination of vulnerability and volume is precisely what makes them indispensable. The system cannot rely solely on the silent strength of adults like the mother crocodile. It requires alarms, small, numerous, sensitive to disturbance, and quick to signal. The hatchlings embody this role perfectly. Their cries are not meant to defeat intruders, but to reveal them, to light up the hidden grid of the river with sound. Once the alarm is raised, the true guardian can arrive. As the sun sets, the river transforms. Shadows lengthen, the air cools, and the forest comes alive with nocturnal calls. The hatchlings huddle in the shallows, their striped bodies camouflaged among reeds. Yet even in rest, they remain vigilant. A sudden splash, a predator's approach, and the chorus erupts once more, shrill, piercing, impossible to ignore. For those who hear it, the meaning is clear. Something has disturbed the threshold. The alarms have sounded. The guardian is near. Australia is a continent of thresholds. Its deserts roll outward like oceans of stone. Its forests shimmer with heat and shadow, and its rivers and coasts form liminal spaces where the boundaries of land, water and air dissolve into one another. Life here is not scattered randomly, but seems arranged with uncanny precision, each species occupying roles that extend beyond mere survival. As we have seen, 5 animals in particular embody patterns of guardianship, navigation, signaling, and defense. Individually, they are marvels of adaptation. Together, they suggest something more, the outline of a system, a network encoded into the fabric of the land itself. The goanna, for instance, is not just a desert predator. Its claws and burrows make it a literal and symbolic gatekeeper of the arid interior. By excavating the earth, it shapes micro-habitats, turning the desert into a mosaic of hidden refugees. Its sensory tongue allows it to detect the faintest traces of life underground, marking it as an animal attuned to what lies beneath. In the framework of the Stargate Network, the goanna becomes the custodian of entrances buried in sandstone and sand, the first barrier between the traveler and what lies hidden below. The blue-ringed octopus, by contrast, defends thresholds of the sea. Its venom, drawn not from its own cells but from bacterial symbionts, is a reminder that life often borrows power from the unseen. Its glowing rings flare in tidal pools and reef shallows, signaling danger with a clarity that no predator can ignore. As an oceanic lock, it keeps the coastal portals secure. To step unwittingly into its domain is to risk a death measured in minutes, a deterrent that has enforced caution in both predators and people for millennia. Across the plains, the kangaroo carries the role of navigator. Its movement is not random but deliberate, each bounding path tracing invisible straight lines across the land. Indigenous songlines preserve this truth, encoding journeys that map both geography and spirit. The kangaroo, forward-moving by anatomy and instinct, becomes a living compass for these lines. To follow it is to remain safe along the ley-like currents of the continent. To stray is to risk disappearance, not only from dehydration or exposure, but from the fabric of reality itself. Then there is the frilled-neck lizard, the signaler. Camouflaged against bark one moment, exploding into spectacle the next, it is the embodiment of sudden revelation. Its frill is both biological alarm and potential thermoregulator, an adaptation that blazes forth when thresholds shift. To observers, both predators and people, the message is unmistakable. Change has arrived. In the Stargate metaphor, the flaring frill is a beacon, a flare fired skyward when portals stir into activation. Finally, we come to the crocodile hatchlings. Individually, they are fragile, vulnerable to predation from every direction. But together they are a chorus of alarms. Their squeaks call the mother, but they also broadcast a wider warning, a piercing acoustic flare that ripples through air and water alike. When thresholds at rivers and swamps are crossed, the hatchlings' voices ignite, triggering the response of the adult, the true guardian of the waters. Their role is not to defeat intruders, but to announce them, their strength lying in their numbers and their sound. Taken separately, Each of these animals represents an evolutionary triumph, shaped by millions of years of adaptation. Taken together, they resemble pieces of a larger design, a distributed security system stretching across one of the most forbidding continents on Earth. And here the indigenous songlines become central. To many Western interpretations, songlines are spiritual songs, but to those who carry them, they are maps. They encode geography, resource locations, and safe passageways, guiding travelers through an environment where mistakes are fatal. The presence of animals within these stories is no coincidence. The kangaroo, the goanna, the crocodile, all appear not merely as characters, but as signals, markers that tell when to walk, when to stop, and when to avoid a place entirely. If one accepts the possibility that songlines are more than myth, they may represent a cartography of the Stargate Network itself, a set of instructions for traversing a system of hidden thresholds where following the wrong path does not just lead to thirst or starvation, but to vanishing. From a scientific standpoint, these patterns can be explained through ecology. The goanna digs burrows that others use. The octopus glows to deter predators. The kangaroo's straight paths reflect efficient energy use. The frill signals danger. The hatchlings cry for protection. Each is a product of natural selection, a behavior that enhances survival. Yet these very same adaptations, when viewed in aggregate, resemble a code, a layered system where each animal plays a role not in isolation, but in coordination. The suggestion is that evolution here has been bent towards something larger, some continental defense that transcends the needs of a single species. The consequences of this theory are sobering. If Australia is more than a continent, if it is a living fortress shaped by its animals into a biological security network, then to enter its thresholds carelessly is to risk obliteration. The portals these creatures guard may not be metaphorical. They may be real. Subterranean chambers in deserts, tidal pools that shimmer with unseen currents, ley lines that cross the plains, forest clearings that pulse with invisible waves, and riverbanks where the air vibrates with alarm. To step into one unprepared is not simply to become lost, but to be erased, scrubbed from both geography and memory. The indigenous stories that warn of disappearance along songlines may not only describe natural dangers, but a deeper truth, one that science has not yet deciphered. Cinematically, the finale reveals itself not in words, but in images. The map of Australia appears from above, its deserts, forests, rivers, and reefs glowing faintly in the dark. Upon this canvas, symbols emerge. The goanna sprawls across the inland deserts, its burrows puncturing the red earth. The blue-ringed octopus pulses at the coasts, its glowing rings flickering like portal lights. The kangaroo bounds across the plains, leaving behind a web of ley-like trails. The frilled-neck lizard erupts in the forests, its frill radiating energy waves, and along the rivers, clusters of crocodile hatchlings cry into the night, their voices rippling outward like sirens. Slowly the animals' positions connect, glowing lines stretching from desert to coast, from forest to river, from outback to reef. What emerges is not a random scattering of life, but a circuit, an interconnected network that hums across the continent like a living Stargate system. The vision is at once scientific and mythic. It reminds us that animals are not only products of evolution, but also participants in human meaning-making, embedded in stories that teach survival and encode memory. It suggests that ecosystems may carry not only biological roles, but symbolic ones, signaling thresholds between the seen and unseen. And it leaves us with a question: what if both perspectives are true? What if the animals of Australia are at once evolutionary marvels and fragments of an ancient defense, guardians of portals we do not yet understand? The continent falls silent once more. In the desert, a goanna slips back into its burrow. Along the reef, a blue-ringed octopus vanishes beneath a rock. Kangaroos bound into the distance, their trails fading into the heat. A frilled-neck lizard folds its frill against its body, vanishing into bark. Crocodile hatchlings squeak once more before sinking into the shadows of the riverbank. Each animal resumes its ordinary life, its role in ecology unchanged. Yet the pattern remains, waiting for those who can see it. The Stargate Network is not a myth. It is a map written in biology, a system etched into the skin of the continent. And for those who fail to read its signals, the land offers no forgiveness.